good afternoon, good evening, Nordstrom, good everybody. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I am Eagle Falcon. We have a lot to talk about. A lot of very, very interesting stories, to say the very least. First, we need to talk about the biggest database breach in history. Yes, there is a new world's biggest database breach. Before, the world's biggest database breach belonged to what everyone called Collection 1, which was a massive database of emails and passwords. This one, Collection 1, by the way, was what? Oh, I actually have it right here. 773 million email addresses and passwords. This new one, which is being called Collections 2, 3, 4, and 5, has leaked out 2.2 billion, with a B, email addresses and passwords. Bravo. Bravo. I'm not gonna lie. I'm impressed. I didn't think we could top just shy of 1 billion email addresses being leaked out. And lo and behold, we did it. We did it, everyone. We doubled it. And then some. Actually, what did we do? We tripled it. And then some. Just for crying out loud. You want to talk about some major problems when it comes to security. This is one of them. This is it right here. What more can you say? So yeah, not the worst idea in the world. Go change your password if you haven't done so already. Now, granted, Lord only knows if you'll ever get hit. When you have this many, any hacker, any rogue organization is going to have a rough time going through all of this. Especially since there is a good chance that of those 2.2 billion email addresses, there are bound to be duplicates. Especially since it came from 4 different collection databases. But still, probably a good idea. Just be on the safe side. Go change your password. It isn't the worst idea in the world. All right, let's talk about Amazon. Amazon has opened up a second headquarters. And it was supposed to be a huge win for this area where they opened up their second headquarters for New York City. Articles from places like Recode have been saying that it promised to deliver 25,000 jobs, all of which had average salaries of $150,000 a year, and it was supposed to open up in Queens. Now, these same articles, specifically the one I'm referring to is from Recode, tries to say that this would make New York City a tech hub on par with Silicon Valley. I don't know how you can logically say that, considering the fact that Amazon's MO usually is, kind of on the whole thing of just being retail and advancing retail and finding new ways to do delivery and logistics. Like, when you really think about it, Amazon as a tech company is probably the least techy of the tech companies. Now, I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be called a tech company, but you compare it to, say, Silicon Valley, where Apple came out, where Microsoft came out, where a metric ton of innovative startups trying to use modern technology to reinvent the wheel, and you want to compare the Amazon HQ, where a whole bunch of white-collar jobs are going to be, to Silicon Valley? I really don't think so. It would be more accurate to say something like, oh, I don't know, a giant Foxconn development where massive LCDs are being manufactured, which would then in turn bring in a whole bunch of other manufacturing jobs to go take those large LCD panels or OLED or whatever into making other technology that is closer to being a new Silicon Valley, but still not there. And I know I am shamelessly kind of just pushing that out there because I live in Wisconsin, as people in the chat are already pointing out. But that is closer to claiming that you are going to be the next Silicon Valley than, say, frickin' Amazon being in Queens saying, yep, we're going to have executives here. And we're going to do executive things like have people deliver packages in vans. Now, that being said, Amazon is still trying to figure out how to deliver packages with drones. I actually still wish Amazon all the luck in the world with that, especially with the bigger and bigger and bigger pushes to restrict drone traffic as much as possible. All because some twits decided to fly drones near airports. Yeah, that's right. You ruined the fun for everyone. Jerks. It's all your fault. But back to the whole point. Tons of people in New York City are looking at the new Amazon jobs. They don't like them. It's actually kind of funny. Unjust Man in the chat is taking shots at Wisconsin, saying he's glad he doesn't live in Wisconsin with all the snow and goblin raids. Oh, Lord. Only one of those two things is true. I'll leave you to decide which is true about Wisconsin. The snow or the goblin raids. Good luck. But in any case, everyone is very, very upset about the Amazon jobs solely because of the various tax subsidies that have been pushed up front for Amazon to build this HQ. Over $3 billion in those tax subsidies. And that's what's got everyone kind of angry. Here's the funny thing. Why didn't anyone say anything about this before the construction? It was only afterwards. But regardless, so that's what Amazon's looking at. They needed to build headquarters. New York offered them the best deal. And they like the idea of going to New York, so they went to New York. And the people of New York are not happy about that because they hear $3 billion in tax subsidies. And they get angry. So what does Amazon do? Why, they're willing to provide computer science classes for the New York City high schools. I mean, yeah. It's almost the same sort of way here in Wisconsin with Foxconn as well. where Foxconn moved in and immediately, before actually even being urged to do so, looked to the various colleges and tried to push as many tech classes as possible so that they could actually get the workers they need. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? But you know people are still going to be angry. Lord knows we're still getting plenty of people angry around here just because of Foxconn. And I hate to keep comparing Amazon to Foxconn because they really are two radically different entities when it comes to the tech world. But there's a lot of similarities between the two projects. So we will see how things go for Amazon. Unjust Man in the chat points out that in the article that we have here for Amazon providing computer science classes, that they are actually showing a very, very old MacBook Pro that this kid is working on. Like he points out that that the Mac comes with a CD drive. I can actually tell you in this picture they have a 13-inch MacBook Pro. It appears to be about a 2007-2008 design, complete with a CD-ROM drive and everything. You know, back when, and I don't mean to take this really, really cheap kidney punch shot at Apple, but back then, when the MacBook Pros actually were relatively close to being considered a professional laptop. Yeah, Apple fanboys, you know I'm right. Don't even try to deny it. But yeah, now the rest of the chat's pointing back out. Yeah, it's just a stock photo, and yeah, we know. But it was a chance for you to give a cheap shot at Apple, and I can't help myself. It's like a disease. Especially since, I actually did look up to Apple for a very, very long time as being a company that would both create pretty good hardware that still looked amazing. And now they are just a joke compared to what they used to stand for. Speaking of Apple being a complete joke, Apple wants to be the Netflix for games. Apple, you what? Let me get this straight, Apple. You, the company that makes a phone that barely works, that keeps taking away as many user-accessible parts, the company that currently has phones that is all screen with no ability for any sort of assistive buttons, which gamers desperately want right now when it comes to gaming. You think that you can create the Netflix for gaming. Oh, man. That's a good joke. I'm not gonna lie. That's the best joke I've heard all week. The sad thing is that it's true. There are reports that Apple wants to create a subscription-based service to give its users access to mobile games on their various mobile platforms. There are also additional rumors along with that they are working on 7th gen iPod Touches and iPads to go along with this. The sad thing is, I believe it. I can totally see Apple doing this. let's be realistic. If you've seen any of the keynotes for some of the past iPod Touches and for the iPhones from, I'd say 2-3 years ago, they push saying that they are a legitimate gaming platform. Even though anyone who actually is confident enough to call themselves a gamer would look at iOS as a gaming platform and laugh even harder than I just did. They still have the audacity to call themselves that. In fact, they have gone so far out to say that they are the biggest gaming platform out there. The sad thing is that when you take worldwide numbers and the increased number of people who casually play Flappy Birds one time while they're on the toilet, it's true. Which, I mean, made me go from laughing to being really, really depressed just on that ground alone. But regardless, that's where we are right now. Mobile gaming is huge. And as we'll talk about later on in the podcast, portability and being able to game on the go overtakes people sitting down at home and playing a very high quality game by a lot. So as dumb as this sounds, I can totally see Apple moving this direction to raise revenue. And it would make up for the fact that they are now selling $1,000 nigh indestructible phones with reduced functionality, and therefore not selling all that many phones. It would help make up that gap. And on top of that, selling a new iPod Touch, which would just be an iPhone without the phone in it, can help cover that gap. Now, here's what I really want to know. What is going to be the cost of the iPod Touch? Because you can safely assume the specs are going to be close to the iPhone XR. If anything, it's going to be an iPhone XR, except slightly thinner. And that's basically it. No phone, just slightly thinner. That means you're still going to have the crappy liquid retina display. You're still going to have that 6-inch screen, which is actually be a huge boost from where the iPod Touch currently is. And theoretically, it would be made out of aluminum and have the same camera with no Force Touch. By the way, the lack of Force Touch, I still could not believe there's no Force Touch on the iPhone XR. That is the one touch capability that Apple has that no one else has, and they killed it. They did not allow the XR to have it. And if they don't allow the iPod Touch to have it either, it's pretty much a non-starter. Because that takes away a massive piece of user input that could be used for games. I said Force Touch. I meant 3D Touch. The ability to press harder and have the device recognize it. I'm probably willing to bet, knowing Apple, that iPod Touch is going to start at $400. I'm willing to bet, just to try and justify the XR still existing at $750. Which then just brings you back to the elephant in the room, like Unjust Banana in the chat pointed out, $300 for a Nintendo Switch. for a 7-inch tablet that can dock and be a living room experience, that has universal USB Type-C, which, by the way, there are rumors that the next generation of Apple devices may swap Lightning to USB-C, which would be the biggest no-brainer in the world, seeing as how they already did it with the iPad Pro. And most importantly, for all gamers in existence that actually care about games, it would have physical buttons. I cannot stress enough how no one wants to deal with non-physical buttons. It is obnoxious, it is annoying, and it needs to stop. But you know it won't. Alright. Let's talk more about Apple. Like the fact that, that group FaceTime had a very interesting exploit in it. So, did you know that group FaceTime, you could add someone to your group FaceTime and it would force activate their mic before they could even answer? Let that sink in for a second. That is a big deal. We talk constantly about the fear that these smart speakers, like the one Amazon has, like the one that Apple has, like the one Google has, that they might be listening in. But that's just to a company. Anyone with an iPhone could have, since last, October? Since last October, could force anyone's mic on and listen in on them. That's a big deal. Now, fortunately, Apple has since taken FaceTime group chats for FaceTime offline, while they look into the calling exploit and go, well, we should get rid of that. To which the rest of the world will go, yeah, you should. Yet twit. Now, you might be wondering, well, what's the fallout for Apple on that? Well, normally I'd say nothing, because Apple gets away with all of this stuff. I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time Apple was really held to account for, oh, wait a minute, that's right. People actually did vote for with their wallets to say no to $1,000 plus phones or $750 phones that have the capability of a $300 phone. So actually, yeah, there was one time that Apple was actually held accountable for their life choices. And also this time, they've also been held accountable for their life choices in having a bug that should have been caught in beta testing or even alpha testing. They are, in fact, being slapped with a lawsuit because someone was able to listen in on a confidential business conversation by force activating their mic. Whoops. Yeah. Smooth move. Now, one last thing to talk about before we leave this Apple block. We talked for a moment about the possibility of the next generation of Apple devices all switching to USB-C, which, by the way, is a no-brainer. This is a move Apple should have done, I don't know, when did the MacBook first come out? 4 years ago? Like, when they did it to the MacBook, they should have just started shifting everything, including the iPhone, over to USB-C. It was the biggest no-brainer in the world. But they just had to make that Lightning port money. Now they're not going to. And then in addition, there are rumors that the next iPhone, the iPhone either 11 or 12, depending on how they want to number it, will have 3 rear cameras. Why 3? I don't know. But the rumors also include having a quote from CNET, 3D rear camera powered by lasers. And with that, I'm going to close the book on the Apple block and just ignore any more iPhone rumors until the next podcast or until we get closer to the next iPhone release. Instead, we're going to move over to what I'm going to call the green block. Because this is kind of a weird move. Now, Rabbit Amoeba in the chat said, please, everything go USB. Pretty please. Now, there is one thing I will comment on. Stop that. Had a video play on one of these things. I don't think everything can go USB-C. I do think an overwhelming majority of our laptops, of our phones, of our tablets can go USB Type-C. But things like a real mobile workstation, like for example, my Dell Precision here, the one that basically is a portable studio. USB-C cannot power a laptop this powerful. Just like USB-C also can't actually give enough power to power, say, something like this. For the viewers, I'm holding up an Alienware M18X. A laptop that consumes 330 watts. But that being said, yes, I would like every phone to please go USB-C. I would also like more USB-C connectors. And I also can't see... Just use 2. Just says just use 2 USB-Cs. In the case of something like the Alienware, though... Do you have any idea how many USB-C bricks I'd have to plug in? There would literally have to be 4 power bricks for the Alienware to power that one. Now, in the case of my Dell Precision, the M4800, that would only need 2. That draws 180 watts. So one USB-C for 100, another one for 80. But no, multiple USB-C power outlets. I know you're joking, but no. Oh, 1 brick for 4 ports. Oh my god. This is getting dumb. This is actually getting dumb. Now, before Unjust started messing with me with the multiple USB-C connectors, there is a company, I completely forgot their name, and I apologize for that, but there is someone who does make the USB Type-C cables, but the end tip breaks away. And it's held on by magnets. So you actually could, on anything that's USB-C, just get a bunch of those cables. I think they're like $30-40 each, which is kind of expensive for a cable. But you could get that magnetic connection style to literally any USB-C device you'd want with pretty much the exception of a Nintendo Switch, because you still need the dock in order to get video out. Wah, wah, wah. But anything else you'd be golden on. But anyway, back to the green block, which we were just getting started with. Samsung is planning to get rid of all plastic packaging for phones, tablets, and TVs. Oh. What? Oh, my lord. I kind of get it. Just because there are a lot more people who don't recycle the plastic packaging than there are people like me that look at the plastic, look for the recyclable symbol, and go, oh, I can recycle it and put it in there. Like, no joke. I usually just groan, roll my eyes, and facepalm at a lot of this green movement stuff, because a lot of it goes out of its way to try and just seem eco-friendly while not actually doing anything eco-friendly. But no joke, I recycle more than I throw out. By like a 2-to-1 margin. I kid you not. But Samsung's planning to get rid of plastic to move to any other kind of material. Yeah, unjust putting down the point I just kind of made, but did a poor job of. That more people throw out that sort of stuff rather than actually recycle it. There's also the fact that a lot of actual recycling centers end up throwing out a lot of what they get just because they can't process it fast enough, which is also a shame. But we're getting off track. The whole point is to try and use paper products, pulp molds, and more biodegradable materials in order to ship stuff out. Unjust Man in the chat also says it's become worse with China refusing shipment of materials. Wonderful. Maybe that's actually pushing this movement more than just Samsung wanting to be green and using things that'll decompose more. Because plastic really doesn't decompose unless it's a very specific kind of plastic. Like, most don't. Like, at all. But that's something to look forward to down the road. More and more cardboard and paper-based packaging. And really, it's something that's not that big a deal. But, you know, it is a move, and it is something to make, to be aware of. Now, you might be thinking, hey, Eagle, that is not a very good story. That's just kind of a quick little thing. Why did you make an entire green block? I'll tell you why. Because there's a new company on the block that wants to use reusable packaging and deliver groceries that way to bring back the ancient milkman, in quotes, service model. When I first heard this made me laugh for quite a bit. Pepsi, Nestle, and more will test reusable packaging subscription service. So all the packaging for the food will be reusable. And you just, after you're done using it, I would assume wash out the packaging. And even if they don't require you to, you probably still should, so that you're not a jerk. And then you put the empty reusable containers out, they are collected, and then new full ones with the food are put out there. The service is called Loop, and they will have UPS drivers drop off these various packages. Oh, the article does say Loop will handle the cleaning and reuse aspect of the packaging. I would still clean it at home. I would at least rinse it out. So the last thing you want to do is to find out your ice cream, for instance, because we have a picture here of ice cream in what appears to be an aluminum reusable container going bad while sitting outside waiting for transport, and that smell never coming out. That has to be aluminum, right? Because, like, steel would just rust eventually. That's gotta be. This service is going to launch. It is hoping to launch in parts of Paris, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania in mid-May. It is also planning to work out deliveries for London through Tesco later this year, and is aiming to launch in Tokyo in 2020. So, I, as a tech enthusiast in Wisconsin, will never ever hear about this service for a very, very long time. Which is kind of a shame. Even though I make fun of it, this actually does sound kind of legitimately interesting. And actually, this right here, this thought of reusable containers actually could change the grocery industry a lot more than things like Peapod and such that are right now pushing for grocery delivery to your door. Because in the end, as convenient as grocery delivery to your front door is, there's always still going to be people who would rather go to the grocery store. By making this argument, by saying that you are legitimately helping the environment and helping to save costs by using reusable containers, that could actually be a much more compelling argument, and that could actually kill grocery stores entirely. Because no matter how you look at it, if you're able to save, say, 15% on your grocery bill by going this route rather than going to the grocery store like you were, that might compel those who are too used to grocery shopping to go that route. All right, we're actually going to take a quick breather break, and then when we come back, we need to talk about the Epic Game Store and the actions they're taking. Welcome back, Eagle Eyes on Tech. So, Metro Exodus. This is a story, to say the least. That was not my bumper. I apologize for that. But in any case, I'll have that fixed next time. Alright, so, Metro Exodus. This is actually a story, I'm not going to lie, I don't know much about the game itself. But here's how it basically goes. Metro Exodus was originally supposed to only launch in physical copy and on the Steam store. All right. And then what they announced is that, well, at the very, very last minute, they just kind of said, yeah, we're going to go ahead and just launch on the Epic Game Store. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal. So what? The game is going to be available on Steam and on the Epic Game Store. What's the big deal? It costs less on the Epic Game Store than it does buying from Steam or buying the physical copy. That's not okay. Let's say I was a big fan of this game. I'm going to pretend that it's any other game, a game I've actually heard of, a game I'm actually looking really, really forward to. And I already pre-ordered my copy. I already scheduled it on my stream. I already dedicated time to playing this game. I haven't, but let's pretend I have. And I find out weeks before the launch that, oh, by the way, your pre-order, not refundable, by the way. You paid more for it than what we're going to sell it for on a different platform. What? Talk about stabbing your fans in the back. This is now bringing up the argument about, all right, should PC games cost less on a different platform? That's not the point. I have a feeling that a lot of places are missing the point. Ars Technica, especially here, which is where I got the article, should PC games cost less than the Epic Game Store, is missing the point. It's the fact that they said we're going to be this price, and then at the last minute declared that, oh, by the way, we're going to be cheaper over here. So have fun, all of you who already went and pre-ordered the blasted game. What? Are you kidding me? Now, the Epic Game Store has been pushing harder and harder and harder and harder to actively compete with Steam. And I'm not going to lie, I have been very, very lazy and have not made an account for the Epic Game Store at all yet. And that's my fault. My bad, guys. I've been bad about that. I have no problem with that, but the whole point is the fact that at the very last minute, you just say, well, if you went and got it for this, if you went and got it for this platform, over that platform, on the same hardware, you're hosed. And on top of that, we announced it later, like a giant, massive bait and switch. Rabbit Amoeba in the chat does ask, what's the incentive to do so? It's actually very simple. When you sell games on Steam, you first have to put up a certain amount of money. In the case of when I was looking up for my little Mimi game, Horsewiener Saga, it's $100. And then on top of that, you get Steam takes a cut of your sales per sale. Epic Games, I don't know how much they charge up front, but they take a much smaller cut than Steam does. Steam was like 12% or something like that. And Epic's was like 7, I think. Don't quote me on those numbers. But that is currently Epic Games' push. It was kind of funny enough. When this whole thing started, it was first Discord who announced they were going to sell games on Discord with their little Nitro store. And then Steam announced, hey, by the way, here's the numbers we used to charge. If you sell more copies, we take a smaller cut. And it was really after that that Epic went, wait, you're taking that much? We can do better than that. And then I don't know if the Epic Game Store existed before Steam made that cut. Unjust, those numbers you just provided, is that how much the developer keeps or how much the platform takes? But back to the whole thing. I don't know if the Epic Game Store actually existed before Steam launched their article saying the numbers. Oh, the developer keeps. That actually could be right. I think it Unjust Banana is trying to say that the Steam store let the developers keep 70% of the revenue, where the Epic Game Store is letting the developers take 88% of the revenue. So for those who can't quick math, that's Steam taking a 30% cut, whereas Epic Games is taking a 12% cut. And that's actually a much bigger deal. But even when you're talking large numbers of sales, 1 or 2% is a really big deal. And now you make it an 18% difference? That's an even bigger deal. So, don't get me wrong. I get it. I get developers trying to look for any way to save money, but to at the very last minute make this change is just a giant slap in the face to everyone who followed your rules in the first place, and you just quickly change it on them. Now, to make it even better, part of this switch is also the fact that on the Epic Game Store, Metro Exodus will have a 1-year exclusivity deal on top of all this. So for 1 year, you can only get Metro Exodus on the Epic Game Store. And then it'll return to Steam 1 year later. But if you still pre-order from Steam, you will still get it from Steam. I had a problem with what they were doing beforehand. I have an even bigger problem the moment the word exclusivity came in. Look, here's the bottom line here. I am not going to be one of those guys that's going to be all that never thinks about the developer. You know me better than that. I always look at it from the developer's point of view. Developer has to make money. The publisher has to make money. Because if they don't make their money, they can't make games. Making games still costs money no matter how you look at it. Even one freaking derpy streamer firing up RPG Maker and making a freaking meme RPG and call it Horsewiener Saga still costs money. It costs money to get the tools, and it's still, whether you believe it or not, that streamer's time is still worth something. Now, in my example of making Horsewiener Saga, I valued my time at nothing because I viewed it as a joke. The game is a giant joke, let's be perfectly honest. And I don't mean that as it's so bad it's a joke. It literally is a joke. It's 8 hours of joke. At the same time, though, the payoff to me was also exposure. So there's still value in that. The developer still has to make something. Those workers who go and made Metro Exodus, they still need to get money so they can still get groceries to still frickin' pay their bills. This is how the world works, whether you like it or not. And nothing's ever going to change that, no matter how you look at it. And before you start saying anything else, no, we're not going down the frickin' utopia drive. No, we're moving on from that. But the moment you say, hey, by the way, you know how we said we're going to be on Steam? Yeah, we lied. We're going to be exclusively on this Epic Game Store because they're charging us less. But now you've made an exclusivity. Why? Exclusivity deals are the bane in the world, no matter how you look at it. Just because it now makes it so that you want to make the argument that the Epic Game Store is good because it actually puts competition on Steam to be more competitive and to actually force them to not charge 30% to their developers, to the people who actually provide Steam with games so that they can continue to exist. But exclusivity takes away competition. You take away competition, and the whole thing just falls apart. Period. But here's the best part. The best part is that Epic Games is trying to say that exclusivity is a good thing for PC gaming. And yes, before you say anything, I do think that the exclusivity system that Discord has, which granted is the tamest of all the exclusivity systems, is still bollocks. The developers should choose what platforms they want to make for, period. And yes, I do think my exclusivity contract with Twitch is also bollocks, but I sign it. Because they make the rules, and if I want to play ball with them, that's what I had to do. Surprise! But yeah, moving on from my rant of exclusivity. Epic Games is trying to say that it's good. Let's actually go to where their exact claim of exclusivity being a good thing. So you continue through the article, and Epic Games throughout keeps trying to make the argument that no matter how you look at it, that because we take a smaller cut, that means the game is cheaper for you, the player. And I'm not going to lie, that's a good thing. Steam makes the argument, but where the players are, we're the biggest PC marketplace there is. So Epic goes and makes pretty much the whole thing about just going exclusive, right? That way you keep a game away from Steam. But here's the thing, you already have the incentive by making it cheaper. So why? Why make it exclusive if not to take away competition? No matter how you look at it from a business point of view, that's all exclusivity does. It takes away competition. And when you take away competition, you get giants like Steam. Now, in this case, it might actually be a good thing to take Steam down a few pegs. But the way they're going about it is all wrong. As much as I hate to admit it, and believe me, it wasn't all that long ago I was saying I am so sick of having 3, 4, 5, 6 different frickin' game launchers, all of which hogging resources from my computer that, by the way, I'm having a hard time trying to beef up to handle everything I want it to do. The last thing you want is to lose more RAM to the Epic Game Store while also running Steam, while also running the Twitch Game Store, while also running Discord. And by the way, Discord, you're taking up more RAM. You promised me you weren't. Go fix that, by the way. Okay, thanks. It's just such a mess. Now, the makers of Metro Exodus have said that it was all the idea of the publisher, Koch Media, to go ahead and do this. And that they themselves have nothing more to say on the matter. It was out of their hands, which I believe them. You look on Steam, Metro Exodus is not available. Valve has a little notice there saying sales of Metro Exodus have been discontinued on Steam due to a publisher decision to make the game exclusive on another PC store. The developer and publisher have assured us that all prior sales of the game on Steam will be fulfilled on Steam, and Steam owners will be able to access the game and any future updates or DLC through Steam. We think the decision to remove the game is unfair to Steam customers, especially after a long pre-sale period. We apologize to Steam customers and are expecting availability expected to be available for sale through the December 15th release date. But we were only recently informed of the decision and given limited time to let everyone know. So that supposedly they'll be available on Steam on the 15th of February 2019. So, I mean, as far as an exclusivity period, it's a really short exclusivity period. But it still just makes you go, why? Why do this? Now, granted, it has made people like me say Metro Exodus over and over and over again, to the surprise of everyone. I've never heard of the game, so maybe it's going to end up better for them. As for me, I hope this is the last time I ever hear of any game doing this. Let's take another break as we're approaching the second hour. hour of Eagle Eyes on Tech. Let's hop right into it, shall we? It actually has been a long time since we've actually been able to make more than 1 hour of content. Usually go just a little bit over, but so much going on today. Intel has named a new CEO in Robert Swan. Robert Swan, besides having a name that would be made fun of in school, I honestly don't know much about. The only thing that I was able to quickly find was the fact that he served as the company's financial officer. And that's pretty much it. So, I mean, he clearly has some managerial experience. And already, Unjust Banana in the chat wants to know, Mr. Swan, when's 10 nanometer? When is 10 nanometer? Huh? When's 10 nanometer? We're already wanting to know when we're going to hear his swan song. Oh my god. I honestly don't envy Mr. Robert Swan, who I will do everything in my power not to call Dick Swan. Oh, no, that's Richard. Okay, ignore that terrible joke. I don't envy the guy. Because he is taking over an Intel that, kind of in a weird spot right now. For the longest time, Intel's been able to get away with just not really innovating. I mean, they've been doing their best to make little minor adjustments, making things a little more power efficient from year to year, making slightly more powerful processors, amping up what their server processors could do, and basically coast while still developing. Now, he takes over an Intel that has to deal with AMD Ryzen. AMD, who had no idea what to do for a decade, now for the last 2 years, is making high-powered consumer processors that bring absurd, underline absurd core count numbers that literally bring workstation class performance of a couple years ago to the average person for cheaper today. Not to mention the Ryzen Threadripper CPUs. Colossal processors from AMD that can pump out to 36 cores on one chip. You still, by today's standards, on the Intel platform need 2 processors to get that many cores into one system. Unless you get that weird Xeon Phi processor that has 64 cores on one chip, but that doesn't really count, because that's a weird scientific processor. That's going to get nowhere near the kind of performance Threadripper will. So we're going to see where Robert Swan's going to be, and hopefully we'll be able to see an Intel that can actually give us some real performance increase instead of kind of coasting, and be able to actually accomplish 10 nanometers, which theoretically should be happening soon. On that same note, though, there was a new processor release that is not for the lighthearted. There is a new Intel Xeon W processor, and we've kind of touched on it before. Specifically, it is called the W-3175X processor, and this processor costs $3,000. So, if you're an insane person like me, you're wondering, do I get a new processor, or do I get a car? Processor, car. Processor, car. You know, as much of a crazy performance freak as I am, I'm probably still going to buy the car. I also don't have anywhere near $3,000 in the bank. So, that's also not happening. Now, that being said, there is actually some monstrous specs to go with this monstrous processor. First off, it is 28 cores with 56 threads, which that alone is nuts. Base clock, 3.1 gigahertz across 28 cores, turboing up to 4.5 gigahertz. To top that all off, 44 PCI Express lanes. If you don't know, graphic cards take up 16 PCI Express lanes, or 8 PCI Express lanes, depending on how you set them. So you could, in fact, have 2 of the highest end RTX Titans on this thing, full bandwidth, SLI'd together, and make 0 compromises with that. On top of that, you'd still have 8 more PCI Express lanes left over to use for NVMe, so you can have a super crazy fast SSD RAID along with that. You know, just put 3 or 4 of those in a RAID 4, in a RAID 0 or RAID 5, and just go nuts. It is, of course, DDR4 compatible and has a 255 watt TDP. That is a lot of heat that it's going to pump out. TDP, for those who aren't aware, that's how many watts of heat it pumps out. You need a massive cooling block to handle that. I do want to be clear, because Unjust Banana in the chat's already trying to claim that I recommend a RAID 0. I do not recommend a RAID 0. I am all about hard drive and SSD redundancy. RAID 1 or RAID 5 or RAID 6. If you can RAID 6 over RAID 5, RAID 6. RAID 1 is still the best RAID, but you're going to get no additional, storage capacity with that. 255 watt TDP, you either need a massive air cooler or you are basically guaranteed to be moving over to water cooling. And that's without overclocking, which, by the way, because it's a Xeon, you are not going to overclock it. This new CPU will require the LGA 3647 socket, which, by the way, if you don't know, that supports hexa-core channel RAM. To put that in perspective, your average gaming system uses what's called dual channel RAM. The processor communicates to the RAM in pairs of 2. That's pretty standard. Higher end systems will include tri-channel or quad channel. Most use quad channel. My particular system uses tri-channel. It talks to 3 RAM chips at a time. Which is why, if you saw my recent live stream of attempting to upgrade my system, I was pulling out 3 RAM sticks because it talks to 3 at a time. This sucker talks to 6. The boards that are supported for this thing can have 12 RAM slots. 12! It looks absurd. It's this giant. You have this, no joke. It's like a 3-inch by 1.5-inch socket of nothing but gold pins that this CPU sits on, and flanking both sides of this massive frickin' CPU socket are 6 on both sides RAM slots. Now let's pretend you go on the low end for RAM. 4 gigs per slot. I would say that's on the low end for on modern. All right. What's 4 times 12? 48 gigabytes of RAM on the low end if you fill up every single slot of RAM. Now start thinking about if you put in 16 gig sticks. In fact, this particular chipset for a single socket system can support up to 512 gigabytes of RAM. Oh, man. I have to know how much it would cost to build this. Now, keep in mind, you are talking ECC memory. You are talking a Xeon processor. Xeons are built for workstations, for editing. They're designed specifically for professionals. So, of course, pictures already leaked of Asus making a Republic of Gamers motherboard for this blasted socket. You think I'm crazy thinking about using workstation class equipment for gaming and Twitch streaming? Frickin' Asus is already making a gaming motherboard to support this Xeon. Underline this Xeon processor. And the crazy thing is, the pictures they have this motherboard with, you can see the Republic of Gamers logo. You can see all 12 of the RAM slots populated. You can see some additional slots, more than likely used for Asus's either NVMe hard drive system or for, what was the thing that Intel made that a lot of people cared about, and I wasn't really that interested, and I was even less interested once I saw the performance numbers? Optane, that's what it was. Or it's for Intel's Optane memory. Even more madness, this blasted board has support for 2 power supplies. You think I'm exaggerating? There are 2 24-pin connectors for this motherboard. You can hook up to 2 power supplies to this motherboard. I don't know if that's for redundancy or actually because this blasted board with graphic cards requires that much bleeping power. And you wonder why I'm bored by hearing about a brand new quad-core Core i5 or a brand new hexa-core Core i7. That's nothing compared to this nonsense. And that's what this is. Let's be clear. Before I continue geeking out about this is absolute hilarious overkill. It blatantly is. let's shift gears. Let's get out of this rabbit hole. Let's talk about Samsung teasing a foldable phone. The Samsung what is it? The unfolded or the unboxed event, I think is what they called it. Doesn't matter. Samsung accidentally leaked out a video that showcases their folding phone. The design itself actually does look very, very interesting. It looks like a small book, but on the outside, you have a smartphone-sized touchscreen. On the inside is where there's a foldable OLED. So you unfold it, you have your bigger screen, you can interact with it however you choose, and you can close it, and you have your phone. If this is what the folding device is going to be, I'm not gonna lie. I want this almost as much as I want that 28-core Overkill Xeon, but I have a feeling that the foldable phone is going to cost a little less than the $3,000 Overkill Intel Xeon processor. Just a little less. But we will find out soon. I do believe the unboxed event from Samsung will be coming out. Will be out. I want to actually see if this update. Do we have a date on it? Nope, we do not. We will find out February 14th, I believe is when it is, or 16th. It doesn't matter. The thing that does have to be considered, though, is the fact that Huawei also plans on debuting its foldable phone, which we've seen leaks of that, and that actually uses a much more different concept. We talked about it before, but if you don't remember, that's one that's a trifold, that you have a tablet, and then at about the then like the edges of the fold in of the tablet, and then they meet symmetrically at the back. So you're folding it in half, but you have the middle of the screen be the phone, so you have a curved edge on either side. And that, I think, actually is a much better design. But, of course, we won't know. Now, with that being said, as much as I love the concept of foldable phones, even if I could afford one right now, and we have no idea what these phones are going to cost, we imagine being brand new technology with Apple already opening the doors, the Pandora's box on $1,000 smartphones, that more than likely they're going to cost over $1,000. But we don't know yet. We won't know until they're launched. Regardless, I would not buy this generation of them. This is the first time they're out in the wild. I know they have gone through extensive training, or not extensive, extensive testing, the other T word, with this sort of technology. Even if I could afford it, I would not buy one. And I would strongly recommend those of you those of you out there who are listening to this, who have made the wise decision to listen to this podcast, I am confident you as well will not get one of these. No matter how much you want to be, like me, a huge tech nerd that can show off, I have a folding phone! Your phone can't do this, and I'm the cool kid on the block because I have a folding phone! I don't recommend doing it. Because you know there's going to be a flaw that they can't find in testing. We all know it's true. All right, let's talk about Facebook really, really quickly. I talked about this during the early bird briefing over the week, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but there is still something to be said about this. There's some really creepy stuff going on. Facebook has been paying people to install VPN apps that allow Facebook to literally, not figuratively, literally spy on all of their internet traffic. You thought Facebook spying on you was bad. They are literally paying people to install apps that, whether they realize it or not, are consuming everything they do, including taking snapshots of their purchase history from various sites like Amazon. Yes, including the face cam. They can literally take all data. If you are voice calling someone over an app, they can spy on that data. If you are FaceTiming with someone, they can spy on that data. If you do anything, if you got that app on you, they can spy on it. But hey, that $5 you made for installing that app, that was swell, wasn't it? I actually don't know what the price was. Does it actually say on here? Up to $20 a month, plus referral fees. Now, this article does say teen, as people are starting to point out, but these are for users between the ages of 13 and 35. Wow. So yeah, needless to say, Apple, who somehow, despite all of their various questionable practices lately, has managed to avoid a privacy scuffle, is not too happy about Facebook causing a privacy scuffle on their platform, and has since blocked not only this VPN app, but all Facebook developer apps on the entire platform. You gotta give Apple some credit here. That is a big, underline, big move. And really is just slamming down and saying, no, that is not okay. Especially since, I mean, let's think about this for a second. We were talking about collection 2, 3, 4, and 5 earlier. Facebook can monitor all the data you have, including putting in passwords, putting in credit card numbers, putting in literally anything. It's almost a weekly occurrence that data leaks out of Facebook. What if someone got credit card information from Facebook that they acquired through this little piece of nonsense? Now, Unjust Man in the chat says that Apple may demand a piece of the action. I don't think so. The one thing that Apple has prided themselves on is that you get an Apple phone, you get an iPhone, and your data is safe. Every single keynote, they push that as hard as they bloody can. Your info is safe. Your info is encrypted. Your info will never, ever leave this phone. And even when the FBI and the CIA went to Apple to say, hey, unlock this terrorist phone, they still said no. I don't think there is any way, just based on Apple's past actions, as much as I don't like modern Apple, I think there is a 0% chance they would ever say they want a piece of the action. Except in countries like China. I've never heard of an instance of Apple giving in to the Chinese government to break encryption. I'm definitely going to need a source on that. And a reliable one. Now, with all this going on, Facebook did, in fact, hire some privacy law activists. Okay, so there's rumors that Apple has broken encryption for China and Russia. I need more solid proof than rumors. I really do. Especially when it comes to the Chinese or the Russians, because people love to make stuff up about both China and Russia and North Korea. Just because it's so easy to just say, in Soviet Russia, vodka drink you. And it's like, that's not true. Prove it. You can't. You can't prove it one way or another. Now, in my BS example I just made up about vodka drinking you, I can prove it. It's called physics. A drink cannot drink you. Though in the case of vodka, it will mess you up. We're getting off topic. Facebook is hiring top privacy law activists. Specifically, they are hiring the Electronic Frontier Foundation attorney Nate Cardozo, Open Technology Institute attorney Robin Green, and Access Now senior legislative manager Nathan White. This all coming from Mashable. To try and say, hey, we are looking to make sure that your privacy is safe. Whoop-dee-doo. In the same week, you were caught paying people to let them spy on you. You have the balls to try and say that we care about privacy and we've hired these 3 people, these 3 attorneys. Or 2 attorneys and a legislative manager. Say that we care about our users' privacy. Go honk yourself. And yes, I know I just stole that from World of Final Fantasy. I don't care. I'm still not going to swear on this podcast. But invent your own swear. That's literally how I feel. For crying out loud. This is literally the nothing of frickin' hires. All right, let's quickly crank out a couple of little interesting stories, but nothing really big. One might say they are quick hits. Or something. Bleep. We have in the chat bleep, bleepity, bleep, bleep, bleep. Pretty much. 8-Bit Doe is turning its attention to the Sega Genesis. TechSpot reporting that 8-Bit Doe is planning on launching a new console based on Sega's classic 16-bit Sega Genesis. It would apparently have compatibility with Windows, Android, macOS, Steam, and Nintendo Switch. I'm not entirely certain. Or is this just the... Oh no, this is just a retro controller. In addition to that, we have we have other one. We have. Wait, what else do we have here? The Mega Drive also coming out. This is actually going to contain a whole bunch of Sega ROMs on it, and that should be available for just shy of $200. Don't do it, kids. Just don't. Like, why? What's the point? The new 8-bit DOE retro receiver for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, meanwhile, lets you play games on your old console wirelessly. I'm moving on. Like, that's cute and all, but I guess that's a big thing for retro enthusiasts, but if the Sega Genesis retro enthusiasts are anything like the Nintendo retro enthusiasts that I know, if those wireless controllers bring any sort of input lag, there will be hell to pay. Literal hell. What the heck's the point? Oh, here we go. I'm missing this. There is going to be a retro console capable of playing Sega Genesis, Mega Drive, and Master System cartridges. That lands for $190. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Shifting gears radically after that mess of I misread something because I had too much on my plate. Tinder agrees to settle their age discrimination lawsuit. So apparently, if you were 29 or older and you used Tinder Plus, you were charged more than anyone else. I'm sorry, 30 or over. Apparently up to double. First off, this tells you how little I knew. I had no idea that Tinder actually had a subscription service. I always thought Tinder was just free to use. I've never used it, obviously. And that they just use that data to sell you targeted ads. I mean, to me, that just seemed like a no-brainer. They have your name, they have your gender, they have your age. They've got all that. Be easy as cake to sell you some ads with that knowledge, but apparently not. A new Bluetooth standard will help make it easier for you to locate your keys. So this new standard, that's an update to the Bluetooth, I believe, 4.0 standard, or are we up to 5.0 now? 5.1 is we're up to now. This new standard called Bluetooth SIG would allow a receiver to detect multiple different Bluetooth antennae on a device, and with the response speed between those various Bluetooth antennae, be able to determine exactly how far away you are from whatever the location device is. So say, for example, I have and I've done this countless times, a Bluetooth headset. I set it down somewhere, and I am scrambling around everywhere, retracing my steps, trying to find it. This would allow me to play hot and cold with my Bluetooth headset to be able to determine where it is. Interesting. I actually would be very curious to figure out how well that would work. The Ultraviolet service is soon going out of business. Ultraviolet, if you don't know, when you bought a Blu-ray, also gave you a code, and then through the Ultraviolet service, let you go get a digital copy of that same Blu-ray, rather than doing what any sort of digital media enthusiast would do, which is to get a Blu-ray drive on a computer, take that Blu-ray, rip it directly to an MP4 format or whatever format you'd want to use, and then throw it onto a Plex server or any other media server. So yeah, after July 31st, you will not be able to access movies and TV shows through Ultraviolet. You're going to have to go ahead and get that sort of stuff off Ultraviolet as soon as you can so that you will not lose that content. In fact, I would highly recommend doing that thing I just recommended, which is downloading the free Plex app, put it onto a spare computer, and just use Plex. Because it's a box you'd own. Ta-da! You can even go an extra step and actually get a server-grade piece of hardware with a RAID controller and load up all your media onto a giant RAID 5 so that if your hard drive dies on that same Plex server, you don't lose all your media. Not that I've ever done that. Right, maybe the chat was saying UV was easier. I'll admit, I've never used UV. And that's my fault. But then again, I'm also the kind of weirdo that loves making his life complicated. I don't know why. In a related story, GoPro Plus is offering the ability to stash all your videos in the cloud. So when you record with your GoPro, the video will be up in the cloud so that one day it too can die just like Ultraviolet is and you won't have your video. Too soon? Honestly, in the short term, that's actually not the worst way to go. Not worry about onboard storage at all. And just have it send directly up to a remote storage system, pull it down later. If you're going really crazy, go edit your footage later, put together your little action montage. It's actually not the worst thing to go. But the important thing is that those with the GoPro Plus subscription will be unlimited from whatever the limit was before. Does this article actually say from Digital Trends what the limit was before? No. It just says that for $5 a month, you can have unlimited GoPro cloud storage. Not the worst idea in the world. Alright, we talked about this in an early bird briefing. In fact, the one that we just talked about on the day this podcast comes out. The Nintendo Switch is coming with a more portable version of itself. Again, I'm just going to go through this real quick. The Nintendo Switch is locked to specific hardware. The smaller version will inevitably run the exact same NVIDIA Tegra CPU and GPU. That's not going to change. If it did change, all the developers are going to have a huge problem. The screen is still going to be 1280 by 720. That cannot change. That's part of the Switch standard. So that means the screen density is going to go up, which means the cost is going to go up. You're still going to need the cooling solution the Switch has. You are still going to need the docking mechanism that the Switch has, assuming there will be a dock. It actually is quite possible. I actually didn't think about this when I did the early bird briefing. It actually would be quite possible if they get rid of the dock cost, then instead they just let you lay the Switch next to the TV and just connect USB Type-C to HDMI. Because normally right now with the Switch, you can't do that. If you want to get video off the Switch, you have to have it in the dock. There's something in the Switch that prevents you from just hooking up USB Type-C to HDMI and capture it that way. If they get rid of that for the smaller Switch, that actually wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But I guarantee you some company will still try to make a Switch Mini, or more than likely, Switch Go, a Switch Go dock. I actually don't know what the new device, if it's going to exist, is going to be cost, but I'm just going to call it Switch Go, because that makes a world of sense. The controllers will be smaller, obviously. I made the same comment on the early bird briefing. If you're expecting this to be smaller and less expensive, I cannot begin to tell you how wrong you are. There is no way it's going to be less expensive. If I had to place down predictions right now, I would say not compatible with the Joy-Cons currently. It would need smaller Joy-Cons. And granted, there is a lot of space on the Joy-Cons to shave, if they can miniaturize the internal components. I would also guess probably a 5-inch screen, down from the 7, I believe the Switch is. I'm actually glancing over at my Switch dock, which is currently empty because I left my Switch in my bedroom because I was playing Super Smash Bros. Last night. So I'm just kind of glancing over at where the dock is to try and get an idea of how big it is. But then again, that's if this exists. There isn't exactly a whole lot of wasted space inside the Switch, and it's not like you can just go with a smaller CPU. You can't exactly just go for a smaller anything in there. The only thing you can really shave down on and still have it maintain the same compatibility with Switch games is the battery. And would you want to buy a more compatible Switch that has a smaller battery? I don't think so. That's going to be the biggest problem if a Switch Go exists. Intel is showing off a patent for a tri-fold mobile device. This would be a phone or a tablet-like device that folds 2 times in equal proportions, unlike Huawei's, which is not equal. So it could do like a little tablet fold, it could do a laptop little fold, it could do a triangle-like fold, but that's just a patent. We don't know if such a device is going to exist. iRobot has made a robot lawnmower. That, I'm not gonna lie, I thought they already had a robot lawnmower. I guess that was someone else that had it. But there is now the iRobot Terra Robot Mower that can plot out your lawn as long as you put down its guiding posts, and it, in fact, will go and make sure that it cuts your lawn, only your lawn, and not your neighbor's. I hope it also includes some way to detect small animals so that it won't accidentally chop up a squirrel, which was pretty gruesome, or worse, do it to a pet. Ooh. Oh boy. Now, gruesome concerns aside, I want to know, iRobot, when is the robot snowblower? We need a robot snowblower. I'm telling you, it's needed. And now, finally, almost 2 hours later, it's time for the last burb. The last story of the day. Rabbit Amoeba in the chat wants to know snow melting lasers when. I don't know. But we do have audio lasers. MIT has developed laser audio that can deliver an audio message directly to your ear, and only you can hear it. What? I don't know what the possible use case for this could be. Actually, there's probably quite a few. You could use it more close range, pull it up to your ear. And you can just make sure that, hey, you're listening to your phone and only you can hear it. No one can eavesdrop on you. You could send secret covert messages, kind of all James Bond-like, but that seems like it would be pretty easy to intercept. All you have to do is just go, hey, there's James Bond. If I circle him, I can intercept the message, and he won't hear it. Or, the use case clearly, as Rabbit Amoeba in the chat suggests, just be used to make everyone think they are literally, not figuratively, going insane. Oh, science. Oh, MIT. Oh, technology. Why do you make me terrified? I'm going back and gawking over frickin' $3,000 28-core crazy Xeons. That's gonna do it for me. Thank you for listening, and make sure to also check out our new and improved quick-hitting early bird briefing podcast, which you can find on iHeartRadio, Google, iTunes. Take care. We'll see you next time. Well, hi there, fella. This is Goofy. My message is being transmitted directly to your brain with Mickey's Crazy Laser. You should go check out Eagle on Twitch, too. Oh, yeah? I hope you enjoy going insane.